59, 58 seconds. Okay, I'm going to start. All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the last session of the day, to be followed by beer drinking. So I'm going to be cognitive of this situation and talk to you a bit. So my name is Jay Kremke. I'm the product manager for SUSE Linux Enterprise for Power, which is almost equivalent to saying the product manager for SUSE Linux Enterprise for Power SAP HANA, because that is our primary workload here. So I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about some of the the unique things about Power. Going to give you some information about some of the new things that we've changed over the past year or two. In particular, we have a new offering specifically designed for SLUS 11 SP4 that I'll be telling you about. So obviously, IBM and SUSE has a long relationship. You know, when IBM wanted Linux on the mainframe, SUSE provided it. So we've had a really long relationship with IBM, and it's been quite profitable for both of us. I'm not going to go through the individual details there, but obviously we've been doing a lot of things for a lot of time. You know, Power Systems has some kind of unique advantages compared to what I would say more commodity x86 hardware out there. And so it's really designed in a lot of ways for enterprise class workloads. And to be honest, one of the things that IBM doesn't talk about a whole lot is that actually Power Systems have more processing capacity than mainframes do in a lot of cases. So we do have a lot of capability that doesn't get talked about. So when you start looking at really heavy workloads in particular, Power can do things that you simply cannot do in other architectures. Some of that is due to the horizontal, the scaling of the systems themselves. But there's a lot of engineering that's gone into Power over the years. We went through, you know, I remember as a former IBMer, we went through entire release cycles of multiple years just working on things like reliability. We did a bunch of stuff on the hardware back in the late 90s as we started getting in towards Power 4, and then we actually put a lot of stuff into other parts of the system over the years. So Power really was designed for these enterprise class workloads. And so very large, fast memory workspace is one in particular that is useful for things like SAP HANA that are very memory intensive. So lots and lots of stuff been designed into it over the years. The challenge has been, particularly in the case of Linux, is finding a workload that really exploit these capabilities. I mean, running an Apache web server on a Power box while you can do it isn't really kind of taxing the Power box itself. And so for a long time, we were really kind of in view looking for a workload that would really take advantage of Power. Now, a lot of customers over the past several years have been moving up to S/4HANA. I spent a lot of time in the 1990s getting people up on SAP R3, and then there were a whole slew of different products around that people use to try to get the most out of their environment. All those solutions really had challenges, and so SAP really sought to unify it and move to an in-memory database, and they came out with S/4HANA. So it's been quite remarkable. IBM started support, well actually SAP started supporting HANA on Power around, I believe it was September of 2016. So this was right about the time, it was about 6 months before I left IBM and went to work for SUSE. So it was quite fortuitous timing because once we got HANA there, we saw a tremendous growth in workloads on Power. So, you know, we've done a lot of stuff around Linux in general, obviously, but, you know, Linux OS for S/4HANA. HANA is only supported on Linux, not supported on AIX. We've done a lot of stuff in order to make it easier to run those environments. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why we did this and how we were able to do it. But the bottom line is that SUSE has had a long relationship with SAP, a long and profitable one, and we work very closely together. And in fact, we're separated, you know, our headquarters are only, you know, basically 100 miles apart. So we've done things to really take advantage of what SAP needs to offer, and at the same time, we're able to take advantage of what IBM offers with Power 9. Now, this was an example that just came out about 2 weeks ago. This was a case study that IBM published, and I think it's on the bottom of the slide that you can't see. but it was a consumer goods company. They were using HANA on a bunch of x86 appliances. And what they found was, number one, it really wasn't keeping up with the workload. Number two was, because they were using appliances that were not, they were horizontally scaled out, they had a lot of administration overhead. And so the company finally said, IBM, can you give us a solution? And so IBM helped them to move their S/4HANA instance over to Power, not as a scale out horizontal solution, but into a vertical environment. And what they saw was, number one, they cut their total cost of operations by $3.9 million. So they saw a significant reduction in total cost, even though the hardware and the components were more expensive than some of the things they replaced them in. They more than made up for it by, number one, getting the performance they needed, but they also cut back significantly on their system administration overhead. So instead of managing 20, 30, 40 servers, they're managing 1 or 2 servers. So this really drove down their expenses, and they were actually able to recoup their investment in 7 months. And for most IT projects to recoup your investment in 7 months, it's unthinkable. So this is a really good one. I like this quote here. We worked out that running SAP HANA on IBM Power Systems offers much lower management costs and TCO than we did with the appliance approach. So there are a lot of customers that have done this. This is one of the really good examples, though, of somebody who didn't come from a Power environment, but converted to it because they saw the innate capabilities of Power and SAP on that platform. So we've had a long relationship, as I said, with SAP. We tend to do things like swap employees. Our newest product manager who's in charge of SAP was an IBMer about 6 months ago. So it's not unusual to see a lot of turnover between the two companies. The fact is, we do work very well together. We have a lot of common interests, and that has resulted in us really kind of dominating the SAP space. So right now we have about 70% of SAP applications overall on Linux. That's across all platforms. We have 90% plus, we think, of all platforms, so that's x86 and Power. In the case of Power, we figure that we're somewhere in the mid-90s. And for things like SAP Business One, we have 100% of that market. Now, if you ask IBMers, they'll tell you that right now they have about 2,500 customers using SAP HANA on Power. So if you think about it, we introduced support for SAP HANA back in 2016. I remember in 2017 we saw something around 780% growth in one single year, and that's sustained to the point where we're now around 2,500 customers. So that's a really big footprint. In some cases, that's bigger than probably the market availability for people that were already on Power. So not only are we getting business from Power customers moving up to SAP HANA, but we're also getting these crossovers like the example I showed you a minute ago, where the customer was running SAP appliances x86 and moved up to Power. SUSE works quite well, as I said, with SAP. In fact, just about everything they runs on SUSE first, or maybe runs on SUSE only. So HANA Enterprise Cloud, that's running on top of SUSE Linux. SUSE Cloud, SAP Cloud Platform runs on SUSE OpenStack Cloud and SUSE Enterprise Storage. Now, that's not the only things they use there. They use some other kind of storage. I think they use some NetApp. But we're the predominant guys there, or the only guys in a lot of cases. SAP Data Hub, another one running on SUSE Enterprise Server, along with CASP and SUSE Enterprise Storage. And it is their reference platform. So we're the first place they go to start out, and in many cases, we're the only platform they use for their infrastructure. Now, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for SAP applications is a bundle that we created a number of years ago. It really basically took not only the best that SUSE had, combined that with some additional utilities and multiple products, basically put it into one model here. And the idea is, number one is to avoid downtime. So how do you avoid downtime? We'll talk about some of the things. Obviously, you have to prevent failures. You have to be able to plan for failures. But you also need to actually deploy the system correctly the first time. If you don't deploy it correctly, it'll break, right? So we spend a lot of effort on making sure that we can deploy it quickly and accurately. We have a lot of different components in here. Obviously, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server is the big one. Full support with cooperation with SAP is one of our hallmarks, but we've added things like SUSE Linux Enterprise high availability as part of the solution. So it's not something you have to pay extra for, it's something that is built into it. And by the way, a few years ago, we used to see customers occasionally that would purchase just regular SLES for power and run SAP HANA environments on it. And we really discouraged that because the reality was they weren't going to see the results that they wanted to see. If you're running a platform like SAP HANA, you need to have all of the components there. Some of them more important than others, but some of the things to make it easier, the installation wizard, for example, and some of the failover and resource agents I'll talk more about in a moment. So it is a complete solution for SAP. Now, I'll talk a little bit about downtime. All of us have been through downtime environments, and the reality is that when you have downtime, it's not just the processing you can't do during that period, it actually ripples all through your business. I had a customer that was using SAP BW a number of years ago, and this particular customer, which is a Swiss company, they had decided that Business Warehouse was not a mission-critical application because it wasn't transactional. Their business didn't depend on it day to day. So they said, okay, no need to do any high availability. That environment went down and stayed down for 2 weeks. And they finally got it back up again. They realized that having that, even though it wasn't transactional kind of data, their business actually depended on it. And they actually figured out that if something bad happened, like somebody dropped an airplane on top of their building, they figured that the minimal time to recover was going to take them 9 months, and it was going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 billion to recover, so, of impact to their business. So, it is huge. It has a huge impact on business, and you have to really plan ahead for how do you avoid having those kinds of losses. So high availability obviously is a key part of this. SUSE has a very well-tuned high availability solution. It's part of our solution for SAP HANA. The automated system replication is one of the things that we really highlight. The ability to actually replicate the data without requiring any kind of end user interaction in there. So if you do have a problem, you're able to fail over automatically, seamlessly. This is something that we offer. We've focused on this for a number of years. Nobody can touch us in this space. Other people have manual systems. We have a fully automated system. Flexible deployment, fast and flexible, as I said before. If you want to have a system be reliable, you need to start with deploying it correctly. So we've done a lot of work on that, not only to make it easier for people to lay it down, but think about it, you don't actually deploy that many SAP instances. You tend to do it, irregularly. It's really about making sure that the installation is correct so that if you do have a problem, you're able to recover from it. SUSE Manager, one of the key parts of this, if you have a system deployed, you want to keep it up to date, you want to keep it up and running. We did a couple of years ago in response to customer demand, allowed the SUSE Manager to actually run directly on power. So if you want to have an all power landscape, you don't have to have any x86 boxes to run SUSE Manager. You can run it all on power. That's been, I think, 2 years now that we've had that. Now, this is one of the interesting ones. I got in trouble for this one, by the way. Anybody here from SAP? No. I got in trouble for this one. A in-memory database environment, like any kind of large memory environment, as it runs, you tend to have fragmentation of memory. You get memory, you release memory, and you tend to end up with fragmented memory. And the challenge is, if you have a relatively small virtual address space, eventually you're going to run out of space to get the next biggest chunk of memory you want in there. And so even though the largest power server today is 64 terabytes, we instituted 512 terabytes of virtual address space. We did this about a year ago. And the reason that we did it is so that basically SAP HANA or any large memory workload can run in there, it can fragment memory, and you don't have to restart it to reclaim that memory again because you've got such a huge amount. And you say, well, you're never going to fill that. That's right, but anything that's not used, obviously, doesn't get access, stays on the paging space, doesn't bother anybody. So 512 terabyte is much larger than anything that's available on x86. I think we have 128 terabytes on x86. So this is one of the examples where Power really does have some significant advantages over the customers. We do now support HANA databases greater than 32 terabytes, and we've enabled this actually back in the Power 8 timeframe. And every SAP HANA instance that we're running on Power right now is using Power VM virtualization. And you can say a lot of things about KVM, but I'll tell you, Power VM has got much more flexibility, much more capability than you're going to get in KVM anytime soon, if ever. Live patching, we introduced live patching last year, I believe. Yeah, we did it with SLUS 12 SP3. Once again, this is in response to customer demand. They wanted to make sure if their systems were up and running, that if they needed to put on a critical security patch, they didn't have to shut down the systems. Things like Spectre and Meltdown really kind of raised the awareness of this in the customer community. We're actually have a demo. If you're go down to the technology showcase, we have a demo of live patching on Power. It's really cool. It just sits there and runs. In fact, this technology we've developed over the years, and we're even doing a technology demonstration of doing it on ARM. So it's not something that's necessarily platform dependent, but it is something that SUSE has quite a bit of capability around, a lot of experience in. The other vendors that are out there that have live patching type solutions end up pausing workloads for a few instances of time. SUSE does not. SUSE workloads run completely uninterrupted. There is no pause, there's no cessation of work. You can run it at full speed while you're going at it. Now, SUSE says that if you do put live patches on, we recommend that you reboot at least every year. So that's not too big of a burden there. All right, just a little talking about that. We use the K-graft approach. Really primarily aimed at things like security fixes. Most people that are running SAP HANA environments have a lot of kind of requirements to make sure that they keep their systems patched. And as I said, nothing to pause there. Fully supported by SAP. Now, as far as keeping up with the different releases, SAP HANA is supported today on SLUS 15. So it's available, it has been available. They actually did a pretty good turnaround for SLUS 15 GA. I think it was only about 3 or 4 months. So it tends to vary, where we hit in the terms of SAP's build cycles or execution cycles. So it's available today for 15 GA, and I believe we added SP4. I need to check that. But we're certainly quite up to date. And if you're going to do a new implementation, obviously I would strongly recommend you go with SLUS 15 rather than SLUS 12. Just because of the relative life cycles. I'll show you some life cycle charts later on, but SLUS 15 is definitely the preferred platform. Now, Power 9, we did a lot of exploitation on it. We were the first Linux running in Power 9 mode. I do not know if Red Hat even supports Power 9 mode yet. When they initially supported Power 9, they were running in Power 8 compatibility mode. I know that Ubuntu runs in Power 8 compatibility mode, but you're not going to use that for HANA anyway. We have been adding support for Open Power servers. So IBM has introduced Open Power servers. I was actually on the board of the Open Power Foundation last year for a year. And so we've got a lot of different vendors out there, Nutanix, Inspur, Yadro, and others that are producing systems based on the Power 9 chip and Power 8 chips. So we did that, we did a lot of stuff there, just going back to Power 8 even. Now, initially we supported Power 9 and SP3, and that was in Power 9 mode. We've done a lot more kind of follow-up stuff. We're enabling a different system tuning parameters and data capture and things like that, because as IBM comes out with successive generations of Power chips, there are architectural differences that do require a lot of, let's say, finesse to really get the most out of it. Typically what happens is you'll do a release that you'll do the initial support, then you'll add more support, and then you kind of finish it out over the next 2 or 3 releases. So that's kind of where we are right now. Power 9 is well supported by SLUS 15 and and SLUS 12 SP3 and SP4. We did introduce support for the Nutanix hyperconverged solution, so it's not directly related to SAP HANA, but the CS821 and 822, those are Power 8 systems. Those are available on the Nutanix hyper-converged infrastructure. And the reason that it was kind of strange because they came to us and they said, we would like to do certification on SLES 11. I said, well, SLES 11 is dead. Why do you want to do that? Well, they were looking and they had opportunities for customers that wanted to move off of kind of older hardware and they wanted to go into a hyper-converged environment. So they did certify in SLES 11 SP4 as well as SLES 12 SP3. So that support is there. It is not yet supported for SAP HANA type workloads. That's a business decision I think that IBM has made. But we're certainly there, and if you're looking at a hyper-converged solution, we can certainly run on Nutanix. Now, this was one of the things that people kept asking about. They wanted support for the IBM VNeck Driver. So this is the IBM VNeck Driver was introduced several years, probably about 6 years ago, and it introduced the concept of SRIOV support through Power VM. Most of the delay here, I'll tell you, was IBM was unwilling to do it on the Power 8 firmware, and so when we got to Power 9, they were ready to certify it. So the benefits of this is, if you understand how Power VM works, if you don't have SRIOV, all the network traffic is being done by the Power processors. So they're moving every bit that gets moved through a network interface card is going through the Power 9 processor. Or Power 8 rather. By doing this with SRIOV, that work gets offloaded to the cards, just like it used to be in the old days. So it allows you to do it with full virtualization, so things like live partition mobility, all of that stuff is enabled. So number one, most people really look at it as reduced processor virtual utilization, decreased latency, and the thing that I'll tell you, when they first introduced Power VM back with Power 4, I asked, what about quality of service? Well, it took them a few years to get there, but they did finally get there. So that is supported on SLES 12, SP3, and later on all Power 9 systems. So if you're on Power 8, it is still technology preview. If you don't like that, complain to IBM, see if they want to do that. We were trying to figure out a way to do it on Power 8, but it really tied down to the firmware. IBM recommends updating, and you can see there's a TID here, 7023703, that fully describes what you need to, the situation you need to be set up with. They do recommend that, they tell you don't attempt to install using SRIOV on SLES 12 SP3 because that support's not in the kernel, in the base kernel for the installer. So 15 and SP4 you're fine, but don't try to do an install. And it is still in tech preview on Power 8, and will probably forever remain in tech preview on Power 8. All right, let's talk about SLES 11. This is a challenge we knew was going to happen. So SAP HANA 1.0 on Power came out around September of 2016, and when they introduced that, they had a decision to make, and the decision was: do we go with SLES 11 or do we go with the relatively new SLES 12? For whatever reason, the decision was made to go with SLES 11. The big challenge was SLES 11 was big Endian. Okay, so it stores data in the big Endian format. So HANA 1.0 came in. Now we've seen, what, 2,500 or so, maybe not 2,500, but we've seen probably 1,000 customers that are running SAP HANA 1.0 on SLES 11. Challenge is, how do you upgrade? Number one is SLES 11 is big Endian. SLES 15 and 12 are little Endian, which means you have to do a data conversion. So if nothing else changed, you'd still have to do a data conversion, like an export and an import. The challenge being is that you can't just do the same thing because HANA 1.0 is not supported on little Endian systems. And so that means you have to do a data conversion, and you have to move from HANA 1 to HANA 2. And, oh yeah, we went from SLES 11, which was the old style format, to SLES 12 or 15, which was System D. So you got to change your operations. So that's a pretty big hurdle. Now, I know that people have been cognitive of this. One of the first, actually the very first offering I did for SUSE when I came over in 2016, or 2017, or 2016, is to do a long-term support package, right? So we offer long-term system service pack support on SLES 11. That's been available since 2016 because we knew people were going to have this challenge, and people were saying, well, what do I do Do I buy SLES 11 now? This is before HANA 2.0 came out. And we said, okay, we're going to give you a roadmap. You're going to have at least through, March of 2021. And by the way, notice that SAP HANA 1.0 in support in May of 2021. Now, how hard SAP will rely on that, we don't know. But we wanted customers to have a kind of a way to continue on. So some customers moved. Not all customers look forward. Some customers get blocked by their business from doing upgrades, and they're saying, holy cow, March 31st of 2019 hit last week. Okay, what do I do now? So if they haven't moved, they've got this challenge to move forward. And so what SUSE decided to do was to create a special offering. And so this offering is called a 3-for-1 promotion. So this is available in the SUSE order catalog. It's also available from IBM. But what we do is we say, look, we'll give you 3 additional years. You can extend your subscription for 3 additional years. And we will throw in 1 free year of LTSS. That LTSS will give you basically another year to move forward. If you can't get done in that year, then guess what? You need to go buy some more LTSS. But we're offering you, you buy 3 additional years of subscription, which gets added on to your existing subscription, and we get 1 free year of LTSS. Okay, some of the caveats. Number 1, this is only available for SLES for SAP on Power. It is not available on x86 because x86 doesn't have the big Indian, little Indian data conversion issue. Customer information has to be provided to us. So in other words, we need to know your customer number and that other relevant information, because if we're going to tack a subscription on to your existing subscription, we need to know who you are now, which is, by the way, not information we have today necessarily, because if you bought your subscription through IBM, IBM knows you, but we don't necessarily know you. The other thing is that the LTSS period is fixed from April Fools, from yesterday, through next year. So it's not a sliding scale. That period is fixed. If you want to get LTSS after that period of time, you're going to have to buy additional LTSS. Basically, we're giving you a way to get free LTSS for up to 1 year, to help you make that data conversion. So this promotion is available right now. One of the complications that we found is that IBM sells stuff through eConfig, but subscription extensions go through TSS. So you would have to go through TSS to purchase this rather than through eConfig. But if you want to, you can purchase it through SUSE directly. So this offering is now available, has been available for several weeks now. What this really gives customers the option to do, so here's a customer today, SLES for SAP, that is a versionless subscription, so it'll run on anything. So customers currently on SLES 11 SP4, the end of standard support ended here. SAP requires that if you're running SAP HANA Productive, you have to have support for it. So you can't get away with not having support. This gives you, this 3-for-1 promotion gives you the LTSS to get you moving forward for an entire year through May 31st of 2020. Actually, that date's wrong on there. Okay, May 31st of 2020. So the idea is that you will use this to further your migration forward to HANA 2 on SLES 12 or hopefully SLES 15. Your subscription continues. We just tack on an additional 3 years to it. So it's basically, a free year of LTSS, give you some time to move forward. We understand it's, for a lot of customers, it's a heavy lift to do this conversion and move forward. We wanted to make it easier for you. One of the other things that we did around SUSE and SAP is that we extended the SPOS duration. So normally in a SUSE environment, you have, let's say, Service Pack 1 comes out, and about a year later, Service Pack 2 comes out. We offer a grace period of about 6 months from one service pack to the next one coming out where we'll support the old one. Okay, that's normal, we call that a normal overlap, as you'll see on a chart. And for SAP, we actually had a special offer in that SLES for SAP applications offered 1 year of what we call extended service pack support. So we gave you a year instead of just 6 months. We've decided to change that for SLES 12 and SLES 15 so that you now get 3 full years. So what that really means is there's no longer any reason for you to purchase LTSS for SLES 12 or SLES 15 because the base subscription is going to get you 4.5 years long of support. Okay, so let me just show you that graphically. It's a little easier to understand. So this doesn't affect SLES 11, so just put it on there. It says doesn't affect it. So here we have an example. SLES 12, let's take SLES 12 Service Pack 3. Service Pack 4 came out at the end of last year. Normally there'd be 6 months of overlap support. What we give you is a full 3 years of additional SPOS. So basically for any service pack on SLES for SAP applications, you get 4.5 years of support as part of the base subscription. So nothing needs to be purchased separately. Kind of to give you in the view of SLES 15 and SLES 12, obviously these are, not committed dates, but this is the normal expectation. SLES 12, you generally will see new updates to SLES 12 every year, generally at the end of the year. SLES 15, you'll see new updates every year, but in the middle of the year. So they're offset by about 6 months. And so with this SPOS now, you have 4.5 years of support from start to end, and you don't have to purchase anything additional. It is built into the SLES for SAP product. And that is the same for Power and x86, so it's not specific to Power. Question?
Do you support live kernel patches during those periods, or only during the...
If it's a critical security update, there's a possibility that you could get live kernel patches. During the LTSS and SPOS period, we're only fixing the critical things, so yeah, live patches would come in there. If it's possible, usually it's possible, but if it's architectural possible, we can provide those. Question? Live patching is an add-on. You have to purchase that additionally. Yeah, it is not included in the base subscription. Okay, what are we doing in the future? So obviously there's going to be continued releases of hardware from IBM. We're going to continue to expand. Things like 64 terabytes of storage is something that we added in there. I will tell you that we have been doing a lot of work with IBM on testing very large configurations. One of the challenges that any vendor has is that you only have these very, very large systems like the 64 terabyte systems. There are not lots of those out there for us to play with, right? Even IBM doesn't have too much access to those. So one of the things that we realized is that as the systems get very, very large, it has kind of second order problems or challenges. And one thing that we saw with one particular customer is we found that our data gathering routines, our diagnostics, actually took a really, really long time to run if you had 192 processors and 32 terabytes of storage. So those are things that, in retrospect, you can say you should have thought of that. Well, now we thought of it. So we've been working quite closely with IBM to not only improve the existing tests we had, but also to kind of expand testing, particularly in some of these large configurations, because these are environments that nobody else, you're never going to have an x86 box that gets close to that, right? So we have to do things special around that. So that's one thing we're doing there. One of the other things that I am looking at doing right now is doing something around subcapacity licensing. One of the things that we've heard from IBM is that there are a lot of installations that are heterogeneous, where you're running Linux on some of the processors and running AIX on the others. Traditionally, SUSE has not supported subcapacity pricing. That is something that we are looking at today, is finding out a way to provide subcapacity pricing for Linux on Power. Now, if you look at, if you're familiar with IBM standards around PBU licensing and how do you actually count capacity, we're going to piggyback on those rules. We're not going to invent something new. Question.
So would you have your own license inventory, or would that be collected through the IBM license?
We're going to rely on what IBM does, right? Now, I will tell you that the subcapacity approach that we'll probably take will still be socket-based, so it won't be down to processor-based granularity like IBM does. but it will be better than what we have today, which is effectively no subcapacity. The reality of what we're doing in that space has really been focused on, we know that there have been cases in the field where people have been doing subcapacity on a one-off basis, and I wanted to formalize that process and make it easier for people to use. Because it does turn out that a lot of people, if you're running 192 cores, you've probably got a lot of AIX, or at least some AIX in there, so we want to take advantage of that. But those are kind of the big things that we're working on right now. It's really around, we've got a pretty mature product at this point. As SAP comes out with new things, and SAP does come out with a lot of new things, we'll respond to that, incorporate those changes for power. But it's a mature product at this point, so we don't have to do a whole lot more in kind of changing the base underlying systems. All right, that's it. You're going to have beers in 24 minutes unless you ask questions.
Yes. Do you know about something like NVIDIA on power systems?
That you would have to ask to IBM. So I can't comment on IBM plans around NVDIM or anything like that. You'd have to get that from IBM. We respond to what IBM asks us to do. Things like the 64 terabytes. Usually we have a long roadmap. We've got a pretty good working relationship with IBM. We meet with them every week, so we know what they're asking for in the future. So not only for current generation of processors, but next generation. We have a pretty good headlights and all of that stuff. But you have to talk to IBM about getting comments about future hardware.
Yes. For SUSE on Nutanix on power, is it basically anything that's supported on SUSE on power, SANS, SAP HANA is also supported on Nutanix on power? Is that?
Yeah, basically what Nutanix did is they did the YES certification on the Nutanix hypervisor, which is a modified KVM hypervisor. And so that says that is a supported configuration. So if you're running something on there that is supported on SAP, then you call into support and say this doesn't work, then you're going to get handled. You're not going to get somebody saying, sorry, that's not a supported environment. They'll follow through the normal.
Question.
How often does Nutanix move their hypervisor? Do you have to track that or research?
No, not generally. Like in most examples, they do not recertify on fixes or minor boundaries like that. In fact, we've got a number of environments that customers like, let's say HP or something like that, they'll certify on a system and they won't come back and certify again until maybe another major rev like SLES-15. So I don't know what Nutanix plans are to certify SLES-15. I help them kind of hand walk them through the SLES-12 because they've never done it before, but they don't need hand holding from me anymore. Nutanix is downstairs in the technology showcase, so if you're interested in that, give them an ask. But yeah, it's pretty much a standard process. We give them a test suite and they run against it, and if they have some issues, they have to resolve those issues before it goes forward. To be honest, more often than not, it's a problem with the configuration or the test suite itself than the hardware. Generally, if it works, it works. But yeah. Any other questions? 21 minutes. Okay. Thank you very much.